Hey everyone, I'm Stella Key. I'm a DJ, producer, top liner, and I'm an instructor at 343 Labs. Today I'm gonna walk you through my vocal chain for a track that I've been working on. It's a deep house track, and let's get into it. So I'm gonna be showing you a deep house track that I've been working on. I'm gonna walk through my vocal chain. I'm gonna play the track first. We're just gonna listen to the verse.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, lying to feel alright. Just when you thought.
So that's just a taste of the song. Now I'm gonna solo the vocals with all the effects on, and then I'm gonna turn off my chain and all my returns so you can listen to the vocals without my effects.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, lying to feel alright.
So now I'm turning my chain off, and as well as all my returns.
They don't realize that she's hiding in the skies. Lips.
So this is the vocals completely dry, except for Melodyne and Autotune, which I'm gonna start with. So actually before the Melodyne and Autotune, my first step would be editing the vocals, making sure that there are no breaths, no unnecessary sounds, taking all those away. Those are all the steps I take before mixing it. But for now, we're going to jump into all the plugins that I use on my chain. I'm going to turn my chain on. I'm going to start with my EQ and show you what I do.
Looking for love in the most tainted places.
So this is the first EQ I use on my vocals. I call it the cleaning EQ. So here I want to get rid of all the frequencies that I feel are unnecessary and just clean the vocals, clean up all the unnecessary frequencies, the ugly frequencies. So I usually start by cutting off the low.
Looking for love in the most tainted places.
Usually between 50 and 100 hertz, somewhere there, but it's different for every song. So I really listen.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, lying to feel.
So after cutting off the lows, I cut off the muddiness. So I would say around 250 hertz, 300. Again, I listen and really listen to the boxy, muddy frequencies, and I take those away. So that's how they would sound. After that, I just take a bell and I just go through the vocals and I listen to frequencies that I don't like and I want to take away from the vocals. Basically like that. So all these frequencies are resonances and frequencies that I don't really want in my vocals. And this is how it would look like. And it really depends on where you record the vocals. So if you record the vocals in a very good studio, you're going to spend less time doing this and taking all those unnecessary frequencies away.
Looking for love in the most.
So if I turn this off, this is how it's going to sound. Turn off the first EQ.
Looking for love in the most.
And turn it on.
Lying to feel alright.
It's just cleaning the vocals. So that's my first EQ. The next thing I do is put on a de-esser.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, lying to feel alright.
This is to tame the S's, and I usually leave it at the setting because it usually sounds good. You don't want to overdo this because it's gonna slice and it's not gonna sound good. So I usually like leave it at the setting.
Looking for love in the most tainted places.
Next thing I do is my favorite Slate digital virtual mix rack. And what I do here is basically adding more high frequencies using the air EQ and also the lift EQ, just lifting the high, mid-high frequencies to add more presence to the vocals.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, lying to feel.
So if I turn this off, this is how it would sound like.
Just when you thought that you
turn it on,
played all your races,
the vocal is a lot more present with those high and mid-highs.
Looking for love in the most.
So the next thing I put on my vocals is a peak compression.
Looking for love in the most.
With a fast attack and a medium release. And just a little bit of compression.
Looking for love in the most.
It's really reacting to the peaks. So the loudest parts of the vocals.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, lying to feel alright. Just when you thought.
After that, I add another compressor. I use the R compressor from Waves.
Looking for love in the most tainted places.
This really depends on each song. It's going to be different. Sometimes I compress a lot, sometimes I compress less. It's really the compressed sound that I'm looking for when I'm making EDM. So really compressed vocals.
Looking for love in the most tainted places.
This is how it sounds without
Looking
the
for
compressor.
love in the most tainted places. Lying to feel.
This is how it sounds with.
Just when you thought that you played all your races, she's gone.
So after that, I put another EQ. This is more for coloring the vocal. So adding frequencies when the vocal is sounding thin, for example, adding more body. This is the Pensato EQ that I really like to use on vocals.
Looking for love in the most tainted places.
And I just looking to add more body and more presence to the vocals again. So I add around 800, the low mids,
Love in the most tainted place.
and also a little bit of high mids.
Love in the most tainted places.
So this is how it sounds without.
Feel alright. Just when you thought that
This is
you
how it sounds
played
with.
all your races, she's gone for the morning come.
So after that, I like to add saturation to the vocals just to add more body and more presence. Because when you compress and add so much highs, the vocals can get really thin. And it really depends on the vocal again. Sometimes the vocal is more thin. It depends on the singer. So sometimes the vocal can sound thinner. And that's when I like to add more saturation. I like to use Decapitator.
Looking for love in the most tainted places. Lying to feel alright.
With the
Just when
punish
you
button
thought
on.
that you played all your races.
And I just play around with the drive to see how much saturation I want to add to the vocal.
To feel alright.
I also created drive-et chain within Ableton. So I put the decapitator on the wet chain and then I add the volume, which is basically what you would do when you would use a return track. So I can control how much saturation I add to the vocal and I don't overdo it too much.
For love in the most
So this is how it sounds without.
Lying to feel alright.
This is how it sounds with the saturation.
That you played all your races.
You can always add a little more if you feel like it needs more color.
Most tainted places. Lying to feel alright.
So I'm going to unsolo the vocals and listen.
In the most tainted places. Lying to feel alright.
So this is how my inserts, normally my insert chain would sound like on my vocals. And after this, I move on to the returns. So the first thing I do is parallel compression. So I basically send the vocals to the first return and I put a compressor. So my first return track is my parallel compression. So I usually use the CLA 76 from Waves and I turn the Bluey on and I start compressing. I first send all the vocals all the way to this parallel compression, which is my first return. I turn it on, I solo it,
Looking for love
and I start really compressing this parallel compression return track.
Trying to feel alright. Just when you thought that you played all your
Around 18
races,
dB.
she's gone for the morning comes. They don't realize that she's hiding in the skies. Lips like chemicals, want some more, can get enough. Danger, devil's eyes, don't believe in
Just
all
a little
the
bit more
lies.
output.
No surprise, gone before the morning comes. She's gone before the morning comes.
And then I will be mixing the volume into the track. So I play everything together, I unsolo the vocals, and then I start adding the parallel compression.
Love in the most tainted places, lying to feel alright.
So this is how it sounds like if I add the parallel compression all the way.
Lying to feel alright.
It is a little too loud. So you really want to start from 0 and just listen and add the parallel compression until it sounds just right.
In the most tainted places, lying to feel alright. Just when you thought that you played all your races, she's gone for
Somewhere around there. And if I turn it off, this is without parallel compression.
looking for love in the most tainted places.
If I turn the parallel compression on,
Feel alright.
the vocal is more present and it's getting through the mix a lot better. So that's why we use palette compression. I also like to cut the lows off after my palette compression because compression brings out everything in the vocals as well as the low end again. So that's my first return. I also always use reverbs and delays as returns, so I barely ever use them as inserts on the vocals except for a creative reason. So next thing I move to is the room reverb, which is the small reverb on the vocal.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, like to feel.
I like to use Verbsuit from Slate Digital. And so for this reverb, we're looking for a really short reverb, like a short decay, cut off the lows, a little bit of attack. And then the same exact thing with the palette compression. We start adding the volume of this return track until it's just enough, and we really have to listen for that.
Looking for love in the most tainted places.
So this is how it would sound like if I send it all the way, so the volume all the way on.
Looking for love in
It's just too reverby.
So
we wanna go back.
The most tainted places, like to feel alright.
So this room reverb is really to add more depth to the vocal, not to drown it in reverb. It's just a little bit of room reverb just to add more depth to the vocals.
Looking for love in
So
the
definitely want to watch out with like not adding too much
Looking
reverb.
for love in the most tainted places.
So this is how it sounds without the room reverb.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, like to
And this is how it sounds with the reverb, the room reverb on.
Looking for love in the most tainted
Just a little bit more depth.
places, like to feel alright.
So after that, we have the big reverb. So the decay is going to be longer on this reverb. I usually use the Valhalla Vintage Verb with 4 seconds of decay.
Looking for love in the most.
I send it again all the way to my third return, which is my big reverb return. Turn it
Looking
on.
for love in the.
Cut off the lows afterwards,
Looking for
after
love.
the reverb.
Looking for love in the
So
most.
I'm going to start adding the volume of this reverb return track. And if I send it all the way
Love in the most tainted
like this,
places, like to
it's gonna sound like it's drowning in reverb. So again, we want to start at 0 and go until we're happy with how it sounds like, and it's not too reverby and it's not drowning in reverb.
Just when you thought that you played all your races, she's gone for the morning comes.
So this is how it sounds like without the big reverb.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, like to feel alright.
And this is how it sounds with the big reverb on.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, like to feel alright. Just when you thought.
So one other thing that I do on the big reverb, I sidechain the reverb to the vocals. So I just pick a compressor, turn on the sidechain. As input, I choose main vocals. So basically, whenever the vocal is playing, the reverb is being ducked. So there's more space for the vocals. And whenever the vocal stops, the reverb comes back in.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, like to feel alright. Just when you thought that you played all your races.
Just to give the vocal more space and make sure that the reverb is not getting in the way of the vocal. So after that, we move on to delay return. So I make another return and I put my Echo Boy on it. And for this return, I'm gonna have a 16 note, send it all the way to the return again, and listen to it, cut off some lows, play around with the dry wet to see how much, and add a little bit of feedback. Maybe turn on the mix all the way so we hear the effect of the echo, the delay. And on solo, again, we're gonna start from 0 and add the volume of the delay return.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, like to feel alright.
So that's all the way up. Again, this is gonna be too much. You can hear the delay.
Love in the most tainted
So we're gonna go back.
like to feel.
So with the delay, you really wanna feel it and not really hear it. You just wanna feel the delay and you wanna hear the depth in the vocal. So it shouldn't be too overpowering.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, like to feel alright. Just when you thought that you played all your races, she's gone for the morning comes. They don't looking for
So without the delay.
in the most tainted places, lying to feel alright.
And with the delay on.
Looking for love in the
Just
most
a little bit more
tainted
depth,
places,
not too much.
lying to feel alright. Just when you thought that you played all your races, she's gone for the morning.
So I go back to my chain, I turn it off just to show you how it sounded without all the effects that we just walked through. Solo the vocals.
Looking for love in the most tainted places, lying to feel alright.
Turn the chain back on.
Looking for love in the
Send it
most
to all
tainted
my
places,
returns.
lying to feel alright.
Turn my returns on.
Just when you thought that you played all your races,
Unsolo the vocals.
she's gone for the morning comes. They don't realize that she's hiding in the sky. Lips like chemicals, want some more, can get enough.
And that's how the vocals sound with all the effects on it and the returns. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and if you want to know more, please check out the link in the description, 343 Labs. Thanks for watching. See you next time.